Former President Barack Obama's chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, once said, "You never let a serious crisis go to waste." And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things you think you could not do before. Scumbag politicians, scumbag bureaucrats, and scumbag philosopher kings like Saul Alinsky also believe this, so there's historical precedent that this is very common among the political class, the bureaucrats, people who are psychopaths or sociopaths and desperate to take more power, see an opportunity in crisis. Now I'm going to show you for months now that the economic and political elites in many different governments, globalists, people running governments, key bureaucrats, people from big tech, people from China, have been very, very interested in accelerating a government cryptocurrency program. Eric Townsend has called this a Fed coin. This is a government cryptocurrency hijacking blockchain technology so they can track and tax transactions and have more control over us, part of a cashless society plan for more control over citizens. And using what Rahm Emanuel said, the coronavirus is only going to accelerate things. And I'll show you more proof of that with a bunch of articles in this short little video, all the different headline clips based on cashless society or government cryptocurrencies. But first, let me just show you some of the different articles where it was proven that central bankers or government politicians were already discussing government cryptocurrencies months before the coronavirus, and how the coronavirus outbreak and the devastation to the global economy and the global supply chain may accelerate an adoption of government cryptocurrencies in different countries. Stories like this one, or stories like this one, or stories like this one. Even FedCoin is actually mentioned in this one, and FedCoin was talked about in Eric Townsend's book way before this story came out. Now we get to the coronavirus part of the story. So China had it first, and they were disinfecting and destroying cash to contain the coronavirus. Another story about the Chinese government ordering money be destroyed or cleaned. The World Health Organization, which I hate and is corrupt and is in bed with the Chinese government, and the Chinese government has talked about launching the crypto Yuan for longer than anyone else. So the World Health Organization was talking about how the currency, the Chinese yuan, the paper notes, or whatever the material is that the currency is made out of, could be spreading the coronavirus. So to prevent the spread of the disease, people should use contactless technology where possible, a spokesperson added. Dr. Ben Hunt of Epsilon Theory, he is well known in the financial industry. Also, he was ahead of the curve warning people along with Chris Martenson about the coronavirus outbreak months ago. He's talking about cashless society, getting rid of paper money. This was at the beginning of March. So the elites are definitely discussing this months before the coronavirus, but now it looks like they will be taking the words of Rahm Emanuel and potentially accelerating their timeline for a cashless society and government cryptocurrencies. This is one example where U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin appoints Coinbase chief legal officer to oversee banking system. So about a month ago, this happened. Not everyone covered this. So this is one example. This is another example with only a week after what Steve Mnuchin said, how there was an attempt to put in more blockchain research, more government crypto research into the $1 trillion stimulus. Thankfully, this did not make the bill, but digital dollars and establishment of digital dollar wallets, Nancy Pelosi tried to sneak this, and other Democrats tried to sneak this into the coronavirus stimulus offered by the House Financial Services. So thankfully, the final version of the bill, this was removed, but I wonder who is paying Nancy Pelosi. Could it be the big technology companies that want cashless society, that want social credit score? Could it be the Chinese government, even though in the past Nancy Pelosi has criticized the Chinese government for Tiananmen? Maybe she's on their payroll now. Who knows? But if this is being talked about this much in a crisis with a government cryptocurrency digital dollar, welcome to dystopia. BIS researchers say coronavirus could spur central banks to adopt digital payments faster. So all these stories are being put out there. Lots and lots of stories from different angles that these governments now are thinking about with this crisis accelerating to a cashless society. And that means governments get a larger share of the tax revenues. In a cashless society, you can't get paid off the books. A lot harder. So there is no underground economy where people are getting paid in cash and not putting it into the banks. This would benefit the banks probably even more. Finally, we get to the last one, another op-ed about how the global pandemic shock may hasten central bank digital cash. And I really think there's three factions now here in Washington, D.C. metro area, New York City, and also in San Francisco, Silicon Valley area. At least this is the U.S. segment part, fighting over what to do with the next global financial system. So let me explain my thesis for this. I did an interview with Amir Rosic recently talking about this a little briefly. I've had a little bit more time to think about this. So I think there's three main camps. The first camp is what Jim Rickards talked about in his new book, Aftermath, where he discusses a conversation with Timothy Geithner, who is the former head of the New York Federal Reserve and former assistant treasury secretary. And Jim Rickards was talking to him about SDR and restarting a new global financial system. And Geithner said, no. We're just going to issue press releases and guarantee everything. And most people will go along with it because they believe in government. They trust the system. They believe in government still. They are not anti-government. So, and that's what we've seen a lot of in the last 6 weeks is lots of press releases guaranteeing everything. Enormous amounts of stuff from Congress, enormous amounts of press releases and guarantees from the Fed, whether it's commercial bonds, municipal bonds, money markets, junk bonds, investment grade corporate bonds, on and on and on and on and on. Okay, all press releases, all guarantees, all enormous numbers. That's maintaining the status quo. So I think that's one camp of this power struggle, this fighting factions that's going on here in the US. So there's the status quo camp, and then there's the cashless society camp that wants to implement Fed coin or crypto dollar or crypto yuan or crypto yen or crypto ruble. All these different government digital currencies to ban cash, cashless society, and then they have access to an even larger tax base. Because for a lot of these governments, there's not as much tax revenue coming in, especially now with the coronavirus. But even before the coronavirus, there was a lot of the economy that was not being taxed. And a government cryptocurrency and banning cash would give governments a larger tax base, and they could easily put VAT taxes, value added taxes quickly. If people like me criticize the government, we could get taxed more. We could have our bank accounts or credit cards shut off. So this is why it's so dangerous. So I think those are the two main camps. You have the status quo system people who just want to issue press releases guaranteeing everything and try to keep the status quo going. And as long as enough regular people who don't question the Fed, don't know what the Fed is, don't understand the Fed, don't challenge them, believe in the system, don't question government, still believe in government, or maybe they're a little skeptical of government, but nowhere near the levels of people who listen to my podcast, versus the cashless society, government crypto people want to hijack blockchain technology and use it for nefarious purposes. Finally, there's a third camp, and it is a very distant third camp, that's some type of gold backing for a new system, maybe a fractional gold backing, some type of gold backing, not a full gold standard, which is what a lot of people, including myself, would like to see. Either a free market competing currencies allow a free gold price or a bimetallic standard, but that's almost definitely not going to be allowed by any governments if they have a say-so. Now, the market may choose something otherwise, but I don't think the governments will go along with that voluntarily. Judy Shelton is involved with that. President Trump has been trying to get her onto the Fed, but I think that is a very, very distant third in the three factions of what the next global financial system, at least the US's portion, is going to be. So I think it's between the status quo system, which sucks. I hate the status quo system, and so do many other people. But a lot of the economic and political elites really liked how things were before the coronavirus. And then you have the cashless society camp. So those are the two main camps that are fighting it out right now. If you think there's another camp, comment below the video and let me know. But I think those are probably the two main camps of preserving the status quo, maybe a few bailouts here. You bail out companies like AIG, you manipulate the stock market up, and a couple of years later, you sell off those shares at a profit when things return to somewhat normal levels a couple of years from now. And that's what the US did essentially in 2008 and 2009. They changed some rules. They did a bunch of bailouts. They suspended the accounting rules for the banks. I think that's the plan, is to either maintain the status quo or to accelerate to a cashless society. But clearly these power factions in DC, in New York City, in Silicon Valley are not agreeing with each other on a lot. There's still a lot of infighting and power struggles in there. which is kind of good because then one group is not clearly in the lead and there's opportunities to prepare and tell people what's most likely happening behind the scenes. So we can tell by what the plans that some of these people have by the news stories that are coming out, because a lot of these journalists are really just writing stuff that they were told to write. Just like Nancy Pelosi doesn't really know anything about Bitcoin or Ethereum or blockchain technology or cryptocurrency. I doubt she owns any or knows what it is, but she was clearly told to sneak that into the bill, probably paid a hefty sum of money, even though she's already worth $140 million on estimates.